the moment a trembling 7-year-old grabbed a Mafia boss's hand and whispered, "Please walk me to school. I don't feel safe." Something inside him snapped. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just turned cold, lethal, and every man on that street felt the air shift. But when he discovered why, she asked. The war he unleashed would tear open secrets her bullies never meant to expose. If you're hooked in and want to enjoy this story, go ahead and subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see where everyone's watching. Plus, tomorrow I've got another incredible story lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, back to the story. She hadn't slept in 2 nights. Every morning, the walk to school felt like stepping into a hallway of shadows. The whispers weren't just cruel, they were threats. The black car that crawled down her street wasn't paranoia, it was real. And when a terrified 7-year-old walked straight up to the most feared Mafia boss in the city and asked him to walk her to school, nobody was prepared for what came next. What Dale Coleman did didn't just shock his empire. It exposed corruption that reached into schools, police stations, and powerful families. It ignited a war in the criminal underworld, and when a man known for breaking bones became a little girl's protector, the entire city realized that some lines even in the Mafia should never be crossed. Alright, let's go back to where it all started. Sharon Casey was 7 years old. Just 7. She loved drawing pictures of flowers, collected stickers of butterflies, and dreamed of becoming a teacher someday. She lived with her mom, Linda, in a small 2-bedroom apartment on Maple Street in the heart of the city, a neighborhood where crime statistics were high, but where neighbors still looked out for each other, where corner stores knew you by name, and where survival meant keeping your head down. Linda worked as a waitress at Romano's Diner, pulling double shifts most weeks just to keep the lights on and food on the table. Money was always tight. The apartment was cramped, but their home was filled with love. Every morning, Linda would braid Sharon's light brown hair before school, her fingers quick and practiced. Every night, they'd curl up together on the worn couch and read picture books until Sharon's eyes grew heavy. Sharon's soft laughter filled that little apartment. She was a happy child, a normal child. But 3 weeks ago, everything changed. And what started as schoolyard bullying would become something far more sinister, something that would pull a Mafia boss out of the shadows and into the most dangerous role he'd ever played, protector. It began on a Monday morning in late November. Sharon was walking to her 2nd grade classroom when 3 older boys blocked her path in the hallway. Brandon Wells and his 2 friends, 5th graders, bigger, louder, crueler. Brandon had that smirk, the kind that told you he knew he'd never face consequences. He knocked Sharon's backpack off her shoulder, her notebooks scattered across the tile floor. When she bent down to pick them up, one of the boys kicked them further down the hall. Other kids walked past, heads down, pretending not to see. A teacher glanced out from her classroom, then quickly shut the door. "Look at the baby," Brandon sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. "Gonna cry? Gonna run to mommy?" Sharon didn't cry. Not then. She gathered her things with trembling hands and walked away. She told herself it was nothing, just mean kids being mean. It would stop, but it didn't stop. The next day, they took her lunch money. The day after that, they shoved her against a locker hard enough to leave a bruise on her shoulder. By the end of the first week, Brandon and his friends had made Sharon their favorite target. They waited for her in hallways, followed her to the bathroom, whispered things that made her stomach twist with shame. "Nobody likes you. You're poor. Your mom can't even afford to buy you nice shoes." Sharon started taking different routes through the school, trying to avoid them, but the building wasn't that big. There was nowhere to hide. Week 2, the bullying intensified. Brandon started bringing more friends. The circle of torment grew wider, and Sharon's world grew smaller. She told her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, during recess one afternoon. Mrs. Patterson gave her a sympathetic look and said she'd keep an eye on things. Nothing changed. She told the school counselor, Mr. Hughes. The following week, he nodded thoughtfully and told her she needed to be less sensitive and try to get along with everyone. The bullying continued. Linda noticed the change in her daughter, the quiet at dinner, the reluctance to go to school, the way Sharon flinched at sudden noises. One evening, Linda sat Sharon down on their couch and gently asked what was wrong. Sharon broke. She told her mother everything, the shoves, the insults, the fear that lived in her chest every morning. Linda's face hardened with protective fury. The next day, Linda took off work and marched into Riverton Elementary. She demanded a meeting with Principal Leonard Wells. Principal Wells sat behind his large oak desk, fingers steepled, expression carefully neutral. He listened to Linda's concerns with the practiced patience of someone who'd heard it all before. "Miss Casey," he said when she finished, his tone almost patronizing, "I understand your concern, But kids will be kids. Sometimes they're rough with each other. It's part of growing up. Learning social dynamics. Social dynamics? Linda's voice shook. My daughter is being terrorized. She's 7 years old and afraid to go to school. I'm sure it feels that way, Principal Wells said smoothly. But children can be dramatic. We'll monitor the situation, of course. But I don't think intervention is necessary at this point. Linda left that office knowing the truth. Nobody was going to help her daughter. That night, Sharon lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of the city outside her window. Sirens, car horns, distant voices, and then a new sound. A car engine, idling slowly on her street. Sharon got up and peered through her curtains. A black car with tinted windows sat below, its headlights off. She watched it for 5 minutes before it finally rolled away. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The next morning, the black car was there again. This time, the back window rolled down just enough for Sharon to see a teenage boy's face. He stared directly at her. Then he smiled. Sharon ran all the way to school that day, her backpack bouncing against her spine, tears streaming down her face. Nobody was coming to save her. So Sharon decided she'd have to save herself. Sharon had heard the stories. Every kid in the neighborhood had. The men in black cars who sat outside Luigi's Cafe on 4th Street. The ones with suits that cost more than her mom made in 3 months. The ones nobody looked at directly. The ones who made problems disappear. Her mom had warned her, stay away from those men, baby. They're dangerous. But dangerous to who? Sharon wondered now, clutching her backpack straps as she stood at the corner of 4th and Maple, staring at the line of luxury vehicles parked outside the cafe. Brandon had cornered her again that morning. This time, he'd grabbed her drawing notebook, the one filled with her flower sketches, and torn out 3 pages before shoving her into the wall. When she'd tried to tell the hallway monitor, the woman had been on her phone, waving Sharon away dismissively. And the black car? It had followed her for 4 blocks after school yesterday. The teenage boy had rolled down his window and said, loud enough for her to hear, I know which apartment is yours. Number 4, B. He knew where she lived. Sharon's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She looked at the cafe again. At the men standing outside in their sharp suits, exhaling cigarette smoke into the cold November air. At the biggest one, the one everyone seemed to orbit around. He stood apart from the others, leaning against a black Mercedes. No tie, collar open. Tattoos creeping up his neck like dark vines. His face was hard, angular, unreadable. Even from across the street, Sharon could feel the weight of his presence like gravity itself bent around him. Dale Coleman. She'd heard his name whispered in her building's stairwell. Heard the older kids talk about how he once made a man disappear for disrespecting his sister. Heard the stories about the empire he controlled with nothing more than a phone call and cold, calculated violence. He's dangerous, her mother's voice echoed in her head. But so is the boy in the black car, Sharon thought. So is Brandon. So is everyone who won't help me. She took a breath. Then another. And then Sharon Casey, 7 years old, with braided hair and a torn backpack, stepped off the curb and walked straight toward the most feared man in the city. The bodyguards noticed her first. A little girl, crossing the street alone, heading directly toward them. One of them straightened, hand moving instinctively toward his jacket. Another stepped forward, preparing to intercept, but Dale raised a hand subtle, commanding, and his men froze. He watched Sharon approach with dark, unreadable eyes. She stopped 3 feet away from him, her sneakers scuffing against the sidewalk. Her chin trembled. Her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. But she didn't look away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Dale's men exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. Children didn't approach Dale Coleman. Adults barely dared to make eye contact. Finally, Dale spoke. His voice was low, controlled, dangerous in its calm. You lost, kid? Sharon shook her head. Then what are you doing here? Her voice came out small, fragile, but steady. I need help. One of the bodyguards chuckled quickly, silenced by a sharp look from Dale. Dale crouched down, bringing himself to Sharon's eye level. Up close, she could see the tattoos more clearly, intricate designs that disappeared beneath his collar. His eyes were intense, searching, but not unkind. Help with what? He asked quietly. Sharon's words tumbled out in a rush. There are boys at school. They hurt me. They take my things. They push me. And there's a boy in a black car who follows me home. He knows where I live. I told my teacher. I told the counselor. My mom went to the principal. Nobody helps. Nobody listens. Her voice cracked. I'm scared. Every day, I'm scared. Dale's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes, something sharp and dark and very, very dangerous. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sharon. Sharon Casey." "How old are you, Sharon?" "7. Dale was silent for a moment, his jaw tight. Behind him, his men had gone completely still, watching their boss with an intensity that suggested they understood. Something significant was happening. "This boy in the car," Dale said carefully. "What does he look like?" "He's older, like a teenager. The car is black with dark windows, and..." Sharon's voice dropped to a whisper. "Yesterday he told me he knows my apartment number." Dale's hands curled into fists. The movement was subtle, controlled, but his knuckles went white. One of his men, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, leaned in and murmured, "Boss, we should..." "Not now," Dale cut him off, his eyes never leaving Sharon. He studied her for a long moment, this small, terrified child who'd walked up to a Mafia boss because she had nowhere else to turn, because every adult who should have protected her had failed. Something in Dale's chest, something he thought had died years ago, twisted painfully. "Sharon," he said finally, his voice softer than his men had heard in years. "Where's your school?" "Riverton Elementary, on Oak Avenue." Dale stood, his full height suddenly imposing. He looked at his men, then back at Sharon. "What time do you leave for school in the morning?" 7:30. "What's your address?" Sharon hesitated for only a second. "Maple Street, Building 12, Apartment 4B. Dale nodded slowly. Then he did something that shocked everyone present, including himself. He knelt down again, placed a gentle hand on Sharon's small shoulder, and made her a promise. "Tomorrow morning I'm walking you to school. Nobody's going to hurt you. Not anymore." Sharon's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" For the first time in 3 weeks, Sharon Casey felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. 20 minutes after Sharon walked away from 4th Street, hope flickering in her chest for the first time in weeks. Brandon Wells sat in his uncle's office at Riverton Elementary, feet kicked up on the desk, scrolling through his phone without a care in the world. Principal Leonard Wells looked up from his paperwork, irritation creasing his forehead. "Feet down, Brandon." Brandon smirked but complied. "Mom says you're coming for dinner Sunday." "I am." Leonard returned to his papers, signing forms with practiced efficiency. "And your father wants to discuss the expansion." "The restaurant thing?" "The business opportunity," Leonard corrected, his tone sharp. "Your father's investments require discretion. Which is why..." He paused, looking at his nephew meaningfully. "We don't draw unnecessary attention." Brandon shrugged. "I'm just having fun at school." "Fun?" Leonard set down his pen. "I've had 3 parents complain about you this month. I can make them go away. I have been making them go away, but you need to be smarter about it. That Casey girl? Among others." Brandon rolled his eyes. "Her mom came in crying about bullying. It was pathetic." Leonard's expression hardened. "That woman is a problem. She's persistent. But I handled it." He leaned back in his chair. "Your father's worked too hard building what we have for you to jeopardize it over some nobody's daughter. Understand?" Brandon nodded, though his smirk never faded. What neither of them knew was that Sharon Casey had just made a move that would unravel everything. Across town, in a renovated brownstone that screamed old money, Patrick Wells sat in his home office reviewing financial statements. The restaurant, his legitimate front, was doing well. The other businesses, the ones that required offshore accounts and careful record-keeping, were doing even better. His eldest son, Ryder, appeared in the doorway. 17, tall, with the kind of casual arrogance that came from never facing consequences. "Dad, can I take the car tonight?" Patrick didn't look up. "Which car?" "The Lexus." "Why?" Ryder shrugged. "Just driving around." Patrick finally raised his eyes. "You've been driving around a lot lately. Where exactly?" "Nowhere specific. Just around the neighborhood." "Which neighborhood?" Ryder shifted his weight, suddenly uncomfortable under his father's scrutiny. "Maple Street area. Sometimes Oak Avenue." Patrick's eyes narrowed. "Why are you in that part of town?" "I don't know. Just exploring." "Exploring." Patrick set down his papers. "Ryder, I need you to be honest with me. Have you been bothering anyone?" "What? No, I'm just driving." Patrick studied his son for a long moment. He recognized the evasion he'd taught Ryder too well. "If you've done something that could expose us?" "I haven't," Ryder said quickly. Too quickly. Patrick's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, a message from his brother. "Leonard. 3 words. We need to talk." "Go to your room," Patrick said, his voice flat. "And stay away from Maple Street." Ryder left without argument, but Patrick saw the flash of irritation in his son's eyes. That worried him more than defiance would have. At County General Hospital, Officer Dennis Kramer sat in the break room, finishing his coffee when his phone rang. Patrick Wells. "We have a situation," Patrick said without preamble. Dennis sighed. "What kind of situation?" "A woman came to my brother's school, making accusations about Brandon. Leonard handled it, but she might escalate. Her name's Linda Casey. Works at Romano's Diner." Dennis pulled out his notepad. "What do you need?" "I need it to go away. If she calls the police, if she files any reports, I need them buried." "That's getting harder to do, Patrick. There are oversight committees now, digital records." "I don't pay you to tell me about obstacles," Patrick interrupted coldly. "I pay you to solve problems. Can you do that or not?" Dennis' jaw tightened. "I can do it." "Good. Because if this becomes an issue, if my family's name gets dragged through any kind of investigation, you'll find yourself answering very uncomfortable questions about the cash deposits in your offshore account." The line went dead. Dennis sat there, staring at his phone, hating himself. He'd started taking Patrick's money 5 years ago, just small favors, looking the other way on building code violations, traffic tickets. Then it became burying complaints. Losing evidence, becoming exactly the kind of cop he'd sworn never to be. He thought about the Casey woman, the complaint she'd probably file, the little girl being bullied. Then he thought about his mortgage, his daughter's college tuition, the hole he'd dug that was too deep to climb out of. Dennis deleted Patrick's call from his phone log and went back to work. That evening, in the Lexus with tinted windows, Ryder Wells sat parked 3 blocks from Maple Street, hands gripping the steering wheel. He'd been following the Casey girl for 2 weeks now. Not every day, he wasn't stupid, but enough times that she'd noticed. Enough times that the fear in her eyes when she saw his car gave him a thrill he couldn't quite explain. It wasn't sexual, Ryder told himself that constantly. It was about power, about control, about knowing he could terrify someone and face 0 consequences because of who his family was. He pulled out his phone and opened a group chat with Brandon and 2 of Brandon's friends. Typed out a message. "Tomorrow, make the Casey girl cry. I want to see it." Brandon responded immediately. "Easy." Ryder smiled, started his car, and slowly drove past Building 12 on Maple Street one more time. He didn't see the little girl in the window, but if he had, he would have noticed something different about her tonight. Sharon wasn't crying. She was waiting. Tomorrow, a man named Dale Coleman would walk her to school. Tomorrow, the Wells family's perfect little empire would begin to crack. They just didn't know it yet. The morning fog clung to Maple Street like a gray blanket, muffling the usual sounds of the city waking up. Sharon stood at her apartment window, her backpack already on, watching the street below with a mixture of hope and terror. What if he didn't come? What if yesterday had been some kind of cruel joke, a grown man humoring a desperate child before forgetting all about her? Linda came up behind her, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Baby, you need to eat something before school." "I'm not hungry, Mama." Linda had noticed the change in Sharon last night, the way her daughter had seemed almost lighter, less afraid. When Linda asked what happened, Sharon had simply said, "Someone's going to help me." Linda didn't know what that meant, but she was afraid to push. At exactly 7:30, 3 black cars rolled onto Maple Street in perfect formation. Sharon's breath caught. They parked in a line outside her building, engines idling, gleaming despite the morning mist. Car doors opened simultaneously, and men in dark suits emerged, 4 of them, moving with the synchronized precision of soldiers. And then Dale Coleman stepped out of the middle vehicle. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, the collar of his white shirt open enough to reveal the edge of his neck tattoos. His presence seemed to cut through the fog itself. Even from the 3rd floor, Sharon could feel the weight of it. "Mama," Sharon whispered. He came. Linda stepped closer to the window, her face draining of color. "Sharon, who is that?" But Sharon was already moving, grabbing her backpack, heading for the door. "Sharon, wait." Linda caught her arm. "Who are those men?" Sharon looked up at her mother with an expression far too serious for a 7-year-old. "They're going to keep me safe, Mama. The bad boys won't hurt me anymore." Before Linda could respond, Sharon was out the door and down the stairs. Dale watched the building entrance, hands in his pockets, his men forming a loose perimeter around him. He'd barely slept last night. Kept seeing that little girl's terrified face, kept hearing her small voice. "I'm scared. Every day, I'm scared." He'd made calls, put his best people on research. By midnight, he knew everything about Sharon Casey, Linda Casey, Riverton Elementary, and the Wells family. What he'd learned made his blood run cold. The apartment door swung open, and Sharon emerged, her backpack bouncing against her small frame as she hurried down the steps. She stopped a few feet away from Dale, suddenly shy, as if the reality of the situation was just hitting her. "Hi," she said quietly. Dale knelt down just like he had yesterday, bringing himself to her level. His bodyguards shifted position, creating a protective circle around them. "Morning, Sharon," Dale said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "You ready?" She nodded, gripping her backpack straps. "Okay." Dale stood and extended his hand. "Let's go." Sharon hesitated for only a second before placing her small hand in his large, tattooed one. Behind them, one of Dale's men, Vincent, his head of security, murmured into a radio. "We're moving." The walk to Riverton Elementary was only 6 blocks, but it felt like a procession. People on the street stopped and stared. A mafia boss, flanked by bodyguards, holding the hand of a 7-year-old girl. It was a sight nobody could quite process. Sharon felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Safe. Dale's presence was like a shield. His men moved with military precision, scanning every face, every car, every shadow. One walked ahead. 2 flanked them. 1 stayed behind. "You eat breakfast?" Dale asked as they walked. Sharon shook her head. "Why not?" "Ezer, I was too nervous." Dale glanced down at her. "Nervous about what? School or me?" "Both," Sharon admitted. A ghost of a smile touched Dale's lips. "Fair enough." They walked another block in silence before Sharon spoke again. "Mr. Dale? Yeah? Are you really going to walk me all the way to my classroom?" "That's the plan. People are going to talk. Let them." Sharon looked up at him, studying his profile. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Dale was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, almost distant. "I had a little sister once. She was around your age, and when she needed help," he stopped himself. "Nobody should have to be afraid to go to school, Sharon. Nobody." Sharon squeezed his hand gently. By the time they reached the school gates, a small crowd had gathered. Parents dropping off their children had frozen in place, staring. Teachers stood on the front steps, their faces pale. Other children pressed against the fence, whispering. And standing in the doorway, visible through the glass, Principal Leonard Wells looked like he'd seen a ghost. Dale walked Sharon straight through the gates, his men following close behind. The crowd parted like water. Brandon Wells stood near the bike racks with his 2 friends, mid-laugh about something. When he turned and Sharon saw who was walking beside her, the laughter died in his throat. His face went white. One of his friends took an involuntary step backward. Dale's eyes locked onto Brandon with laser precision. He didn't say a word. Didn't need to. The message was clear. "I see you. I know who you are. Touch her again, and you'll answer to me." Brandon's lip trembled. Tears welled in his eyes. Just like that, the bully became the terrified child. Dale walked Sharon all the way to the entrance, stopping at the double doors. He knelt down one more time, his dark eyes meeting hers. "You're going to be okay," he said quietly. "I promise." Sharon threw her arms around his neck in a sudden fierce hug. Dale stiffened his men, exchanged shocked glances, but then, slowly, carefully, he wrapped one arm around the small girl and held her for just a moment. "Thank you," Sharon whispered. When she pulled back and ran inside, Dale stood slowly, his jaw tight. Vincent stepped beside him. "Boss, we got a problem. That principal's on his phone, probably calling someone." Dale's expression hardened. "Good, let him call. Let them all know." He turned and walked back toward his car, leaving Riverton Elementary buzzing with whispers that would spread through the entire city by lunchtime. The most dangerous man in town had just claimed a 7-year-old girl as his to protect, and everyone knew what that meant. Dale didn't go back to the cafe. Instead, his convoy drove directly to a nondescript building in the industrial district, 3 stories of brick and steel that looked abandoned from the outside. Inside, it was anything but. This was the nerve center of Dale's operation. The place where information flowed and decisions that shaped the city were made. By the time Dale reached the 3rd-floor conference room, his entire inner circle was already assembled. Vincent stood by the window, arms crossed. Marco, Dale's financial advisor, sat at the long table with his laptop open. Tony, the crew's intelligence specialist, had 3 monitors displaying information streams, and Lucia, Dale's cousin and the only woman in his inner circle, leaned against the wall, her sharp eyes tracking her cousin's entrance. Dale shrugged off his suit jacket and tossed it over a chair. "Talk to me." Tony was the first to speak, pulling up images on the main screen. Sharon Casey, 7 years old, lives with her mother, Linda Casey, on Maple Street. Mother works at Romano's Diner, barely making ends meet. No father in the picture left when Sharon was 2. I know all that, Dale said curtly. Tell me about the Wells family. Tony's fingers flew across the keyboard. New images appeared. Patrick Wells, 46, owns 3 restaurants in the city, all legitimate on paper. But we've had our eye on him for 2 years. Money laundering, loan sharking, connections to the Russian syndicate on the east side. Dale's jaw tightened. The Russians. Yeah. Patrick's been trying to expand into territory we control. Nothing overt yet, but we've intercepted communications suggesting he's looking for weaknesses. And his family? Marco took over, pulling up more files. Brother Leonard Wells, principal at Riverton Elementary for 8 years, clean record publicly, but 3 separate complaints about covering up bullying incidents all buried, 2 lawsuits settled quietly out of court with NDAs attached. He's protecting the bullies, Lucia said, her voice cold. Specifically his nephew. Tony pulled up a school photo. Brandon Wells, 11 years old, 5th grader. 7 documented incidents of violence against other students over the past 2 years. Nothing ever came of any of them. Daddy and Uncle Leonard made sure of that. Dale stared at the boy's smug face on the screen, his hands curling into fists. And the teenager in the car? Dale asked quietly, dangerously. Tony pulled up a DMV photo. Ryder Wells, 17, Patrick's oldest son, drives a black Lexus registered to his father. And here's where it gets interesting. The screen changed to show surveillance footage, timestamps, and locations. We pulled traffic cam footage from the past 2 weeks. Ryder's car has been on Maple Street 12 times. Oak Avenue, where the school is, 16 times. He's not just driving around. He's following a pattern. He's stalking her, Lucia said flatly. A 17-year-old boy is stalking a 7-year-old girl. The room went silent, the weight of that statement hanging in the air. Dale's voice was ice. What else? Vincent spoke up from his position by the window. I made some calls to our contacts in the police department. Officer Dennis Kramer, the one who dismissed Linda Casey's initial complaint, he's on Patrick Wells' payroll. Has been for 5 years. We have bank records. How much? Dale asked. 10 grand a month. Plus bonuses when he makes problems disappear. Dale was quiet for a long moment, his mind processing the web of corruption, intimidation, and calculated cruelty that had cornered one terrified little girl. So let me get this straight, Dale said slowly. Patrick Wells is running illegal operations through his restaurants, trying to muscle into our territory. His son is stalking a 7-year-old. His nephew is terrorizing her at school. His brother is covering it up. And they have a cop burying any complaints. That's the situation, Tony confirmed. And they thought they could do this without consequences because she's nobody, Lucia said quietly. Poor kid from a struggling single mother. No connections, no power, no protection. They picked her because she's vulnerable. Dale's eyes darkened. She has protection now. Marco leaned forward. Boss, if we move on the Wells family, we're starting a war with the Russians. Patrick's connected. Taking him down means taking on his suppliers, his partners. Then we take them all down. Dale interrupted, his voice final. The room fell silent again. Vincent was the first to speak. You're sure about this? Over one kid? Dale turned to face his oldest friend, his expression hard as stone. When I was 12, I watched my little sister get bullied every single day. She begged our parents for help. They told her to toughen up. She begged her teachers. They said she was overreacting. His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. She jumped off a bridge when she was 9 years old. Nobody spoke. They all knew Dale had a sister who died young, but he'd never spoken about how. So yes, Dale continued, his voice gaining strength. I'm sure. We draw a line right here, right now. Children are off limits. I don't care who you are or who you're connected to. You hurt a kid. You answer to me. Lucia straightened. What do you need? Dale turned back to the monitors. Everything. I want surveillance on Ryder Wells 24/7. I want eyes on Patrick's restaurants, his accounts, his meetings. I want every dirty cop on his payroll identified. I want documentation of every complaint Principal Wells buried. And I want it all by tomorrow night. And the girl? Vincent asked. I walk her to school every morning until this is resolved. Nobody touches her. Nobody scares her. She's under my protection, and I want everyone to know it. Tony pulled up a new screen. Boss, there's one more thing. Ryder's car was spotted near Maple Street again, 20 minutes ago. Dale's expression turned lethal. Where is he now? Still there. Parked 2 blocks south of Sharon's building. Dale grabbed his jacket. Vincent, Marco, with me. Tony, keep tracking him. Lucia. Coordinate with our contacts. I want to know everyone Patrick Wells has spoken to in the past month. As Dale headed for the door, Lucia called after him. Dale, what are you going to do? He paused in the doorway, his profile sharp and dangerous in the fluorescent light. I'm going to teach a 17-year-old predator what happens when you hunt children in my city. The door slammed behind him, and his team scrambled into action. The war had begun. Sharon made it through 3 periods before everything fell apart. First period, math with Mrs. Patterson. Brandon sat 3 rows behind her. She could feel his eyes boring into the back of her head. But he didn't say anything, didn't move. The memory of Dale Coleman standing beside her that morning had clearly shaken him. Second period, reading was in the library. Brandon wasn't in her class. Sharon actually managed to focus on her book, losing herself in a story about a brave girl who saved her village. Third period, art was when it happened. Sharon was at her table, carefully coloring a drawing of butterflies, when Brandon and his 2 friends appeared. The art teacher, Mr. Reynolds, had stepped into the supply closet for more paint. Nice picture, Brandon said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. Sharon's hand tightened around her crayon. Leave me alone. Or what? You'll call your scary boyfriend? Brandon's friend Jake laughed, but it sounded forced, nervous. He's not my boyfriend, Sharon said quietly, keeping her eyes on her drawing. He's just someone who's helping me. Helping you? Brandon leaned closer. That freak with the tattoos? My dad says he's a criminal, says he's going to prison soon. Then who's going to protect you? Sharon's chest tightened. She wanted to believe Dale would keep his promise, but a small voice in her head whispered, what if Brandon's right? What if Dale gets arrested? What if he forgets about you? Brandon reached across the table and grabbed Sharon's notebook, the one with all her drawings in it. Her safe place, the pages filled with flowers and butterflies and happy scenes she'd drawn to escape the nightmare her life had become. Give it back, Sharon said, her voice trembling. Make me. Please, Brandon. That's mine. Brandon flipped through the pages, his friends snickering behind him. These are stupid. What are you, 5? I'm 7, Sharon whispered, tears building behind her eyes. 7 and still drawing baby pictures. Brandon found her favorite, drawing a garden with her and her mother holding hands under a rainbow. He ripped the page out. No! Sharon reached for it, but Brandon held it high above his head. What's wrong? Going to cry? He tore the page in half. Sharon felt something break inside her chest, not just the paper, but something deeper. All the fear, all the hurt, all the nights of not sleeping, all the walks to school filled with dread, it all came crashing down at once. She didn't make a sound. The tears just came, streaming down her face in silent rivers. Brandon tore another page, then another. Pieces of Sharon's drawings fluttered to the floor like broken wings. Stop it! Sharon finally screamed, her voice raw and desperate. Stop! 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 The classroom door burst open. Mr. Reynolds rushed in, taking in the scene, Brandon holding the torn notebook, Sharon sobbing, papers scattered everywhere. What's going on here? Mr. Reynolds demanded. Brandon immediately put on his innocent face. Nothing, Mr. Reynolds. Sharon just got upset about her drawing. He tore my notebook, Sharon cried, pointing at the evidence on the floor. Mr. Reynolds looked between them, his expression uncertain. He knew Brandon's reputation, knew his uncle was the principal, knew that teachers who made trouble for Brandon Wells found their contract renewals complicated. Brandon, go sit down, Mr. Reynolds said finally. Sharon, why don't you go to the bathroom and wash your face? But Sharon, bathroom. Now, Sharon grabbed what was left of her notebook, barely half the pages remained, and ran from the classroom, her vision blurred with tears. She didn't go to the bathroom. She went to the far stairwell, the one nobody used, and collapsed on the bottom step, clutching her destroyed notebook to her chest. Great, heaving sobs shook her small frame. Everything Dale had done that morning, the safety she'd felt, the hope, it all felt like a cruel joke now. Because he couldn't be here. He couldn't protect her inside the school. He couldn't stop Brandon when no adults were watching. She was still alone, still helpless, still scared. Sharon didn't know how long she sat there crying. Time became meaningless. But eventually, she heard footsteps. There you are. Sharon looked up through her tears. Mrs. Patterson stood at the top of the stairs, her expression a mixture of concern and exasperation. Sweetie, you can't just leave class. Mr. Reynolds was worried. He didn't help me, Sharon said, her voice thick. Brandon destroyed my notebook, and Mr. Reynolds didn't do anything. Mrs. Patterson sighed and sat down beside her. For a moment, Sharon thought maybe finally an adult would listen, would help, would care. Sharon, Mrs. Patterson said gently. I know things feel hard right now, but you need to understand that boys like Brandon, they come from complicated families. Sometimes we have to be patient with them. Sharon stared at her teacher in disbelief. Patient? He's been hurting me for weeks. I know it feels that way. It doesn't feel that way. It is that way. Sharon was shouting now, all her fear converting to anger. Why doesn't anyone believe me? Why doesn't anyone help me? Mrs. Patterson's expression tightened. Sharon, lower your voice. And frankly, bringing that man to school this morning, that mobster that was inappropriate. You can't solve problems with intimidation. Sharon's heart sank. Even seeing Dale hadn't changed anything. The teachers still sided with Brandon, still made excuses, still blamed her. I want to go home, Sharon whispered. It's only 11 o'clock. You have 3 more periods. I want my mom. Your mother is at work, Sharon. You need to finish the school day. But Sharon couldn't. She couldn't walk back into that classroom, couldn't face Brandon's smirk, couldn't sit there knowing that no matter what he did, no one would stop him. She stood up, gripping her torn notebook. I'm leaving. Sharon, if you leave school grounds, there will be consequences. But Sharon was already running. She burst through the side door into the cold November air, her backpack bouncing, her face streaked with tears. She didn't have a plan. She just knew she couldn't stay there. She ran 3 blocks before she realized where her feet were taking her. 4th Street, the cafe, Dale. Because he was the only person who'd actually listened, the only person who'd actually helped. Sharon ran faster, her small legs carrying her toward the only safe place she knew. She didn't see the black Lexus that had been idling near the school, didn't see it pull away from the curb and follow her. Ryder Wells smiled behind his tinted windows and reached for his phone. This was too perfect. Sharon was 2 blocks from 4th Street when she heard the car engine behind her. At first, she thought it was just traffic. The city was always full of cars. But then she noticed how slowly it was moving, how it maintained the exact distance behind her no matter how fast or slow she walked. Her heart began to pound. She glanced over her shoulder. The black Lexus, tinted windows, the same one that had haunted her nightmares for weeks. Sharon's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to run, but her legs felt frozen. The car crept closer, and then the passenger window rolled down. Ryder Wells leaned toward the opening, his face wearing that same cruel smile she'd seen before. Hey, Sharon. Skipping school? Sharon didn't answer. She gripped her torn notebook tighter and kept walking. Faster now. That's not very responsible, Ryder called after her, his voice mocking. Maybe I should tell your principal. Oh wait, my uncle is the principal. Sharon's eyes darted around, looking for help. The street was strangely empty. A few parked cars, a closed shop, nobody walking. You know what I think? Ryder continued, his car matching her pace. I think you need a ride home. It's not safe for little girls to be walking around alone. That's when Sharon broke into a run. Behind her, she heard Ryder laugh, a sound that made her skin crawl. The car's engine revved slightly, keeping pace with her easily. You can't outrun a car, sweetheart. Sharon's vision blurred with tears. Her backpack felt impossibly heavy. Her legs burned. She was so close to 4th Street, so close to Dale. The Lexus suddenly accelerated, pulling ahead of her and cutting her off at the next intersection. Sharon skidded to a stop, her sneakers screeching on the pavement. Ryder opened his door and stepped out, blocking her path. Up close, he was tall, athletic, with the casual confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. Where do you think you're going? He asked, his smile widening. Sharon took a step backward. Leave me alone. Or what? You'll tell that mobster friend of yours? Ryder laughed. He's not here now, is he? And you're a long way from school. Nobody knows where you are. Sharon's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst. She looked around desperately, still no one. Just empty streets and her worst nightmare standing between her and safety. Please, Sharon whispered. I just want to go. I'm sure you do. Ryder took a step closer. But see, you've caused my family a lot of problems today. My little brother came home crying because of your thug boyfriend. My uncle's getting phone calls from panicked parents. My dad's pissed. So I think you and I need to have a conversation about... He never finished the sentence. 2 black SUVs came around the corner at high speed, tires squealing, and blocked both ends of the intersection in a perfect tactical maneuver. Doors flew open simultaneously, and 6 men in dark suits emerged like a synchronized force. And then Dale Coleman stepped out of the lead vehicle. The transformation in Ryder was instantaneous. His confident smirk evaporated. His face went pale. He took an involuntary step backward toward his car. Sharon, Dale called, his voice calm but carrying absolute authority. Come here. Sharon didn't hesitate. She ran to Dale, and he positioned himself between her and Ryder, one hand resting protectively on her shoulder. Vincent and Marco moved with military precision, flanking Ryder's Lexus, blocking any escape route. Another man, Tony, appeared with a tablet, already recording everything. Dale's eyes locked onto Ryder with an intensity that could cut steel. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared. And in that silence, Ryder's bravado crumbled completely. "You're Ryder Wells," Dale finally said. It wasn't a question. Ryder's mouth opened, but no sound came out. 17 years old, you drive a black Lexus, registration PJKL 2847. You've been following this little girl for 2 weeks. Dale's voice was perfectly controlled, which made it more terrifying. You've been on her street 12 times, near her school 16 times. Today, you followed her from Riverton Elementary and cornered her at this intersection. I didn't, Ryder stammered. Don't. Dale's single word cut through the air like a blade. We have traffic cam footage. We have witness statements. We have everything. Vincent stepped closer to Ryder, his presence menacing. You tried to threaten a 7-year-old child. I was just talking to her. Ryder's voice cracked. I wasn't going to hurt her. Just talking? Dale's tone dropped to something dangerous. You told her you knew her apartment number. You followed her home repeatedly. You waited outside her building. That's not talking, son. That's stalking. That's predatory behavior. Ryder's hands trembled. My dad's going to... Your dad's going to what? Dale interrupted, his voice like ice. Call his lawyer? Call his cop friend? Make this go away like all your other problems? Dale took one step forward. Just one. But it was enough to make Ryder flinch backward against his car. Then Dale did something that made even his own men tense up. He knelt down beside the driver's side window, bringing himself to eye level with where Ryder would sit. His posture mirrored the gentleness he'd shown Sharon, but his expression was pure predator. Let me explain something to you, Dale said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying unmistakable menace. That little girl is under my protection now. My protection. Do you understand what that means? Ryder nodded frantically, tears forming in his eyes. It means if you ever, and I mean ever, look in her direction again, if you drive down her street, if you even think her name, you will disappear. Dale paused, letting the words sink in. Not arrested, not prosecuted, disappeared. Before your family knows you're missing. Before anyone can help you. Gone. Ryder's face had gone completely white. A tear rolled down his cheek. Do you believe me? Dale asked softly. Yes, Ryder choked out. Yes, I believe you. Good. Dale stood slowly, his full height casting a shadow over the teenager. Now Marco here is going to open your trunk, and we're going to find Sharon's torn notebook pages, the ones your brother ripped up today, the ones that somehow ended up in your car. Ryder's eyes went wide. How did you... I know everything, Dale said flatly. That's what you didn't understand. When you target someone under my protection, I make it my business to know everything. Marco popped the trunk with a slim gym tool. Inside, crumpled among fast food bags and gym equipment, were the torn pages from Sharon's notebook. Evidence of coordination between you and your brother, Vincent said, photographing everything. Conspiracy to harass a minor. Tony stepped forward with a document. Ryder Wells, you have 2 choices. 1. We call the police right now, the actual police, not your father's pet cop, and you face stalking charges, harassment, conspiracy. With our evidence, you're looking at juvenile detention at minimum. Ryder's voice was barely a whisper. What's the other choice? Dale answered. You disappear. Not the way I threatened, worse. You leave this city. Tonight. Your father sends you to that military academy upstate he's been threatening you with. You don't come back. Not for holidays. Not for summers. Not for 5 years, minimum. And if I do, then choice 1 becomes reality, Dale said. Plus, I make sure every criminal organization in this city knows you're a predator who targets children. And there's not a prison in this state where you'd be safe. Ryder was openly crying now. The confident teenager who'd terrorized Sharon had been reduced to a terrified child himself. So what's it going to be? Dale asked. The academy, Ryder whispered. I'll go to the academy. Smart choice. Dale turned to Vincent. Make sure his father gets our message. The boy leaves tonight, or we release everything to the media and the DA's office. Vincent nodded. Dale placed his hand gently on Sharon's shoulder and guided her away from the scene. Behind them, Ryder collapsed against his car, sobbing. As they walked toward Dale's vehicle, Sharon looked up at him with wide eyes. Is he really going away? He is, Dale confirmed. He'll never bother you again. What about Brandon? Dale's expression hardened. He's next. Patrick Wells was in a meeting with his Russian contacts when his phone rang for the 7th time in 10 minutes. He ignored it the first 6 times. But the 7th call came from Leonard, his brother, and the message preview made his blood run cold. Ryder's in trouble. Dale Coleman has him. Patrick excused himself, stepped into the restaurant's back office, and called his brother back. What the hell are you talking about? Patrick demanded. Leonard's voice was panicked, almost hysterical. Coleman's men just left my office. They have footage of Ryder following that Casey girl. They have evidence linking him to Brandon's bullying. They're threatening to go public unless what? Unless Ryder leaves the city. Tonight. They want him enrolled at Riverside Military Academy by tomorrow morning, or they release everything to the media and the district attorney. Patrick's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles went white. Where's Ryder now? At home, crying. Patrick, he's terrified. He says Coleman threatened to make him disappear. Coleman's bluffing. Is he? Leonard's voice cracked. You know his reputation. You know what he's capable of. And now he's involved because of your sons. My sons? Patrick's voice rose. Your school is where this started. You were supposed to handle this quietly. I tried, but that mother wouldn't let it go. And now Coleman's made the girl his personal crusade. Do you understand what this means? We're not fighting some struggling waitress anymore. We're fighting the most dangerous criminal organization in the city. Patrick was silent, his mind racing through possibilities, calculating angles. Finally, he said, I'll handle Coleman. You focus on controlling the narrative at your school. How are you going to handle a man like Dale Coleman? The same way I handle any problem. I'll remind him that I have powerful friends too, and that protecting one little girl isn't worth starting a war. Patrick hung up and immediately dialed Dennis Kramer, the police officer on his payroll. We have a situation, Patrick said without preamble. Dale Coleman is harassing my son. I need you to... No, Dennis interrupted. Patrick blinked. Excuse me? I said no. I'm done, Patrick. I can't help you with this. You're done when I say you're done. I pay you. You paid me to bury traffic tickets and look the other way on building violations, Dennis said, his voice strained. Not to protect your sons from stalking charges. Not to go up against Dale Coleman. I have a family, Patrick. I'm not dying for yours. The line went dead. Patrick stared at his phone in disbelief. His pet cop had just grown a spine at the worst possible moment. He made 3 more calls to a city councilman, to his lawyer, to his contact in the Russian organization. The responses ranged from nervous deflection to outright refusal to get involved. Nobody wanted to cross Dale Coleman. Not for Patrick Wells. Not for anyone. By the time Patrick arrived home that evening, Ryder had already packed 2 suitcases. His son sat on his bed, red-eyed and defeated. Dad, I'm sorry, Ryder said quietly. I didn't think... No, Patrick interrupted coldly. You didn't think. You never do. And now you've endangered everything I've built. I'll go to the academy. I'll disappear. Just like he said. Patrick wanted to argue, wanted to fight back, wanted to call Coleman's bluff. But looking at his son's terrified face, he realized something. Coleman wasn't bluffing, and if Patrick pushed this, his entire operation, everything he'd built over 20 years, could come crashing down. Pack the rest of your things, Patrick said finally. You leave in 2 hours. The next morning, Dale walked into Riverton Elementary at exactly 7:45 a.m. This time, he wasn't alone with just his bodyguards. This time, he carried a thick manila folder under his arm. Principal Leonard Wells sat behind his desk, his face already pale before Dale even entered. He'd been expecting this, dreading this. Dale dropped the folder on the desk with a heavy thud. What's this? Leonard asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. Your career, Dale said simply. Or what's left of it. Leonard opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were documents, photographs, surveillance footage, screenshots, and detailed reports. His face went from pale to gray as he read. Buried bullying reports dating back 4 years. Complaints about Brandon that had mysteriously vanished from official records. Financial records showing payments from his brother Patrick to various school board members. Emails discussing how to handle problem parents. A pattern of corruption and cover-ups that would destroy not just Leonard's career, but potentially result in criminal charges. Where did you get this? Leonard whispered. Does it matter? Dale leaned forward, his hands flat on the desk. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to resign. Today, you're going to cite health reasons or family issues or whatever lie makes you feel better. But you're done here. You can't. I can. And I will. Because if you don't resign, I release all of this to the school board, the local news, and the state education department. And then you won't just lose your job. You'll face charges, conspiracy, endangering minors, obstruction of justice. Leonard's hands shook as he closed the folder. What about Brandon? Your nephew is being transferred to a different school district, far away from Sharon Casey, and he'll be watched. If he bullies another child anywhere, ever this folder goes public and you go down with him. And if I cooperate, then this stays between us. You resign quietly, retire with your pension intact, and disappear from education forever. You never work with children again, ever. Leonard sat back in his chair, defeated. 20 years of building a career, and it was over in one conversation. Because he'd protected the wrong people. I'll have my resignation letter on the superintendent's desk by noon, Leonard said quietly. Good. Dale picked up the folder. And Leonard, if you or any member of your family ever goes near Sharon Casey again, if I even hear her name from any of you, I won't be this generous a second time. Dale walked out of the office, leaving Leonard Wells staring at his empty desk, his career in ruins. In the hallway, Sharon waited with Vincent, her small hand gripping the bodyguard's sleeve. When she saw Dale, her face lit up with hope. Is it over? She asked. Dale knelt down to her level, just like he always did. Brandon's going to a different school. He won't bother you anymore. And Mr. Wells won't be principal here much longer. Really? Really. Sharon threw her arms around Dale's neck. This time, he didn't hesitate. He hugged her back, one hand gently patting her back. You're safe now, Dale whispered. I promised you. Remember? I remember, Sharon said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. Later that afternoon, Dale sat in the back room of a restaurant he owned, across from Patrick Wells. Patrick had requested the meeting, probably thinking he could negotiate, could find some compromise. But Dale had no interest in compromise. Your son is gone, Dale said before Patrick could speak. Your brother is finished. Your pet cop has abandoned you, and my people have spent the past 48 hours documenting every illegal operation you run through your restaurants. Patrick's jaw tightened. What do you want? I want you to understand something. Dale placed a small photograph on the table between them. It was Sharon's torn notebook page, the one Ryder had kept as a trophy. This is what your family did to a 7-year-old girl. You raised your sons to believe they were untouchable. That power means you can hurt anyone without consequences. Kids fight. It's normal. This wasn't fighting, Dale interrupted, his voice cold. This was systematic intimidation, stalking, abuse, and you enabled it. You all did. Patrick stared at the torn page, and for the first time, something like shame flickered across his face. Here's what happens now, Dale continued. You stay away from Sharon Casey and her mother. You stay out of my territory. You shut down your loan sharking operation. And if I ever hear about your family targeting vulnerable people again, I don't just destroy your business. I destroy you. You're starting a war over one child? Patrick asked bitterly. No, Dale said, standing. I'm ending one. Because someone had to draw a line. Someone had to say enough. He left the photograph on the table, a reminder, a warning, and walked out. Behind him, Patrick Wells sat alone in the dim room, staring at the torn drawing of butterflies, finally understanding that he'd lost. Not to a rival criminal. Not to the police. But to a 7-year-old girl brave enough to ask for help, and a mafia boss who remembered what it felt like to watch his own sister suffer. The Wells family's reign of intimidation was over, and the city would never forget why. Sharon Casey slept through the entire night for the first time in 3 weeks. No nightmares about black cars. No jolting awake at every sound outside her window. No lying in the darkness, dreading the morning walk to school. Just deep, peaceful sleep, the kind only children who feel truly safe can experience. When she woke up, golden sunlight streamed through her bedroom curtains. Her mother had already left for the early shift at Romano's diner, but she'd left a note on the kitchen table. Pancakes in the microwave. I'm so proud of you, baby. Love, Mama. Sharon ate her breakfast slowly, savoring the normalcy of it. Then she did something she hadn't done in weeks. She pulled out her art supplies and started drawing. The notebook Brandon had destroyed was gone, but Dale's men had recovered the torn pages from Ryder's car. Sharon had taped them carefully back together, preserving what could be saved. Now she started fresh pages, her colored pencils moving across the paper with renewed confidence. She drew a garden again. But this time, there were 3 figures. Her mother, herself, and a tall man with tattoos and kind eyes. Her safe person. At school, everything was different. The whispers started the moment Sharon walked through the gates, but they weren't cruel anymore. They were curious, awed. The girl who'd been bullied had somehow become the girl under Dale Coleman's protection. That changed everything. Brandon Wells was gone, transferred to a school district 40 miles away, living with his aunt and uncle there. The official story was family reasons, but everyone knew the truth. Dale Coleman had made him disappear. Principal Wells had resigned, citing health concerns. The interim principal, Mrs. Davis, had already held an emergency assembly about bullying and implemented a new reporting system with outside oversight. But the biggest change was in how the other students treated Sharon. Kids who'd walked past her in hallways, pretending not to see her suffering, now smiled at her, said hello. One girl, Maya from her reading class, sat with her at lunch. "I'm sorry I didn't help you before," Maya said quietly, picking at her sandwich. "I wanted to, but I was scared Brandon would come after me too." Sharon understood that. She'd been scared too. Still was, sometimes, when she remembered. "It's okay," Sharon said softly. "You're helping now. That's what matters." Mrs. Patterson, her teacher, had pulled her aside that morning with tears in her eyes. "Sharon, I owe you an apology. I should have believed you. I should have protected you. I failed you. And I'm so sorry." Sharon had nodded, accepting the apology, even though part of her wondered why it took a mafia boss's intervention for adults to finally listen. During art class, the place where Brandon had destroyed her notebook, Mr. Reynolds gave Sharon extra time and supplies. "Make something beautiful," he'd said. "Something that shows who you really are." Sharon drew for an hour straight, creating a detailed picture of butterflies emerging from cocoons, spreading their wings against a sunrise sky. When she finished, Mr. Reynolds hung it on the prominent display wall where everyone could see it. "That's stunning." "Sharon," he said, "you have real talent." For the first time in weeks, Sharon felt proud instead of afraid. After school, Sharon didn't walk home alone. Dale had arranged for Vincent to pick her up in an unmarked car, no intimidating convoy, just safe transportation. But today, Dale himself was waiting outside the school gates, leaning against his Mercedes, looking slightly out of place among the minivans and SUVs of normal parents. Sharon's face lit up when she saw him. She ran to him, and Dale caught her in a careful hug. "How was school?" he asked. "Good," Sharon said, beaming. "Really good. Brandon's gone, the principal's gone, and nobody was mean to me, not even once. That's what I like to hear." Sharon pulled out her new drawing, the one with the butterflies, and showed it to Dale. "I made this." Mr. Reynolds said it was stunning. Dale studied the drawing with genuine appreciation. "He's right. This is incredible, Sharon. You're really talented." Sharon's smile could have powered the entire city. They drove to a small diner. Dale knew nothing fancy, just a quiet place where they could talk. He ordered her a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream and a plate of fries. "Sharon," Dale said carefully, "I need to tell you something. The men who were scaring you, they're all gone now. Ryder left the city. Brandon's at a different school. The principal retired. You're safe." Sharon nodded, dipping a fry in ketchup. "I know. Everyone at school was talking about it, but I need you to understand something important." Dale leaned forward, his expression serious but gentle. "What happened to you wasn't your fault. You didn't deserve any of it. And you were incredibly brave to ask for help." Sharon's eyes filled with tears, not sad tears this time, but release. "I was so scared, every day, and nobody believed me until you did." "I know. And I'm sorry it took so long for someone to listen." Dale reached across the table and placed something small in Sharon's hand. "I want you to have this." Sharon opened her palm. It was a small silver pendant on a delicate chain, simple, not expensive, but beautiful. The pendant was shaped like a butterfly. "It's to remind you," Dale said quietly, "that you're stronger than you think, that you survived something really hard, and that you're not alone anymore." Sharon's fingers closed around the pendant, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you, Mr. Dale." "You're welcome, kid." Linda Casey found them there 20 minutes later. She'd gotten off her shift early, worried about where her daughter was. When she walked into the diner and saw Sharon laughing, actually laughing with Dale Coleman, she froze. Dale noticed her immediately and stood. "Miss Casey." Linda approached slowly, her expression a complicated mixture of gratitude, confusion, and maternal protectiveness. "Mr. Coleman, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done for Sharon." "You don't need to thank me," Dale said simply. "I just did what anyone should have done from the beginning." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "You gave me my daughter back. She was disappearing, becoming this quiet, scared shadow. And now—" She looked at Sharon, who was still admiring her butterfly pendant. "Now she's smiling again." "She's a brave kid," Dale said. She saved herself. I just made sure the people hurting her faced consequences. Linda stepped forward and did something that surprised everyone. Including herself, she hugged Dale Coleman. The dangerous Mafia boss stood there awkwardly for a moment before carefully patting her shoulder. Thank you, Linda whispered. Thank you for protecting my baby when no one else would. When they pulled apart, Linda was crying openly. Dale looked uncomfortable with the emotion, but not unkind. If you ever need anything, Dale said, handing Linda a business card with just a phone number on it. You call that number, day or night. Understand? Linda nodded, clutching the card like a lifeline. That night, Sharon lay in her bed wearing her new butterfly pendant, staring at the taped-together drawings she'd rescued. Her mother had tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and whispered, I love you, baby girl. Sweet dreams. And for the first time in 3 weeks, Sharon believed she would have sweet dreams. She thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the pain, the adults who'd failed her, and the one man, the scary, tattooed, dangerous man who'd actually listened when she asked for help. Sharon touched her pendant and whispered into the darkness, Thank you, Mr. Dale, my safe person. Outside her window, the city hummed with its usual night sounds. But the black car was gone. The threats were gone. The fear was gone. Sharon Casey closed her eyes and drifted into peaceful sleep, finally safe. 3 months later, Dale Coleman found himself in unfamiliar territory, a school art show. Riverton Elementary's gymnasium had been transformed into a gallery, with children's artwork displayed on makeshift walls and tables. Parents milled around with plastic cups of punch, admiring their children's creations with exaggerated enthusiasm. Dale stood near the back, hands in his pockets, looking profoundly out of place in his dark suit among the casual-dressed families. Vincent and Marco waited outside. Dale had insisted on coming alone, not wanting to intimidate anyone, but people noticed him anyway. Whispers followed wherever he moved. Parents would glance at him, recognize who he was, and quickly look away. Some gathered their children a little closer. Dale was used to that reaction. What he wasn't used to was the reason he was here. Mr. Dale. Sharon's voice cut through the crowd. She appeared through a cluster of parents, wearing a blue dress with butterfly patterns, her hair in neat braids, practically glowing with excitement. You came! Sharon grabbed his hand and pulled him toward a display near the center of the gym. Come see my piece. Dale allowed himself to be led, aware of every eye tracking their movement. When they reached Sharon's display, he stopped. The artwork was stunning, far beyond what he'd expected from a 7-year-old. It was a large mixed-media piece, combining drawing, painting, and collage. The image showed a small girl standing in darkness, surrounded by shadows with cruel faces. But breaking through from above was light golden, warm, protective, and in that light stood a tall figure with outstretched hands. The title, written in Sharon's careful handwriting, read, My Safe Person. Dale felt something catch in his chest. The art teacher said it was the best piece in the 2nd grade class, Sharon said proudly. Maybe even the whole school. She said I have remarkable emotional depth for my age. Sharon said the last part carefully, like she'd been practicing the big words. It's incredible, Sharon, Dale said quietly, and he meant it. Linda appeared beside them, smiling warmly. She'd gotten a promotion at the diner, better hours, better pay. The shadows under her eyes had faded. She worked on it for 6 weeks. Wouldn't let me see it until it was perfect. It's perfect now, Dale confirmed. An older woman approached Mrs. Davis, the new principal. She extended her hand to Dale with professional courtesy but genuine warmth. Mr. Coleman, I'm glad you could make it. Sharon talks about you constantly. Does she? Dale glanced down at Sharon, who beamed up at him. She does. And I wanted to thank you, actually. Mrs. Davis lowered her voice. What you did bringing attention to the failures in our system, it forced changes that were long overdue. We've implemented new policies, outside oversight, mandatory reporting, real consequences for bullying. That shouldn't have taken a Mafia boss showing up, Dale said bluntly. No, Mrs. Davis agreed. It shouldn't have, but sometimes it takes something dramatic to shake people out of complacency. You did that. And children are safer here because of it. Dale nodded, uncomfortable with the praise but understanding its sincerity. As the evening continued, something unexpected happened. Other parents began approaching Dale cautiously at first, then with increasing openness. A mother with a boy in 4th grade said quietly, My son was being bullied too. After what happened with Sharon, he finally felt safe reporting it. The school actually investigated, actually helped. Thank you. A father whose daughter had been targeted by an older student shook Dale's hand. You showed these kids that adults are supposed to protect them, not ignore them. That matters. One by one, parents thanked him. Not for being a criminal or for being dangerous, but for being the one person who'd actually done something when a child needed help. Dale stood there, accepting their gratitude with awkward nods, feeling profoundly strange about the whole situation. Later, after the art show ended, Dale walked Sharon and Linda home. It had become a routine every few weeks. Dale would check in, make sure Sharon was okay, ensure the protective measures he'd put in place were holding. At their apartment building, Sharon hugged Dale goodnight, a gesture that had become natural between them. "Mr. Dale?" Sharon said, pulling back but still holding his hands. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure, kid." "Why did you help me?" "Really?" Dale was quiet for a long moment. He looked at this small, brave girl who'd walked up to a monster and asked for protection, who'd survived something that would have broken many adults, who'd somehow inexplicably trusted him. "I had a little sister," Dale said finally, his voice rough. "Her name was Emma. She was about your age when some kids at her school hurt her, really hurt her. And the adults didn't listen, didn't help. And he swallowed hard. I couldn't protect her. I was too young, too powerless, and I lost her." Sharon's eyes went wide with understanding beyond her years. "When you walked up to me that day," Dale continued, "asking for help, terrified but so brave, I saw Emma, and I thought, not again, never again. I'm not powerless anymore, and this time, I can actually do something." Tears streamed down Sharon's face. She threw her arms around Dale's neck and held him tight. "I'm sorry about Emma," she whispered. "Me too," Dale said, his voice breaking slightly. "But you gave me a chance to make it right, to save someone, to be the protector Emma needed." When Sharon finally pulled back, she touched his face gently with her small hand. "You saved me, Mr. Dale. You're my hero." Dale had been called many things in his life: dangerous, ruthless, a criminal, a monster. But hero? Never. "You're the hero, Sharon," he said quietly. "You're the one who was brave enough to ask for help." 6 months after that, whispers began spreading through the city's criminal underworld. Dale Coleman's organization had implemented a new, absolute rule. Children were untouchable. Any operation that endangered kids was shut down immediately. Any associate who hurt a child was expelled violently. Other organizations started following suit, not out of morality necessarily, but out of respect for Dale's power and the line he'd drawn. Dale's men noticed changes in him too. He smiled more, was quicker to show mercy, started funding after-school programs in struggling neighborhoods, created anonymous tip lines for children facing abuse. Vincent asked him about it one day. "Boss, what's changed?" Dale thought about Sharon, about her butterfly pendant, her artwork, her laughter, about how one terrified 7-year-old had reminded him that some things were worth protecting more than territory or money or power. "I remembered why power matters," Dale said finally. "It's not about controlling people. It's about protecting the ones who can't protect themselves." On Sharon's 8th birthday, Dale showed up at her small party with a wrapped present. Inside was a professional quality art set, the kind serious young artists used. Sharon's squeal of delight could be heard 3 floors down. She hugged him tight and whispered, "I'm going to make you something beautiful, Mr. Dale. The most beautiful thing I've ever made." "I know you will, kid," Dale said, ruffling her hair gently. "I know you will." As he left the party, Linda walked him to the door. "She loves you, you know. Like family." Dale nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "You changed her life," Linda continued. "But I think she changed yours too." Dale looked back at the party at Sharon, showing her friends the art set, her face radiant with joy, and realized Linda was right. He'd walked into Sharon Casey's life expecting to be her protector. He hadn't expected her to save him right back, to remind him that beneath the tattoos and the reputation and the violence, there was still a person capable of caring, of protecting, of being someone's hero. "Yeah," Dale said finally, a genuine smile crossing his face. "Yeah, she did." He walked out into the evening air, and for the first time in 20 years, Dale Coleman felt something he'd thought lost forever. Purpose that had nothing to do with power, connection that had nothing to do with fear, and love that asked for nothing in return. Sharon Casey had asked a Mafia boss to walk her to school, and in doing so, she'd given him something he didn't know he needed. A reason to be more than what the world expected. A reason to be better. A reason to believe that even in the darkest places, protection and kindness could still matter. The little girl with butterfly dreams had changed the most dangerous man in the city, and the city would never be the same. Thanks for sticking with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, You're going to love the next one. It's packed with unexpected turns and heartfelt moments. Click the image on your screen to keep the journey going, and make sure to hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.